patience, discipline, foresight, research strategy, and if done right, ends in total victory, providing value to the humanity. A warm welcome to all. I am Shivani Boydar on behalf of Bioza Club. Welcomes you all to this webinar, which is conducted in collaboration with Heredity Life Sciences. I would like to welcome respected Head of Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Ranjan Kumar Pradhan, Faculty Advisor of Bioza Club, Dr. Suraj Kumar Nayak, our esteemed teachers, Mr. Viswajit Samantray, Dr. Supriya Das, Mr. Swagat Kumar Das, Mr. Vignesh Balyar Singh, Mrs. Sonali Mohapatra, Mrs. Pragya Priyadashini, and Dr. Abdul Akbar Sir. Next, I would like to welcome our esteemed delegates of Heredity Life Sciences, Dr. Gopal Krishna Purohit, Mr. Swadhin Palu, and Mr. Anjani Kumar Upadhyay. Now, I would like to hand over the space to Somya to introduce speaker and guest of honor of the day. Somya, please.
Thank you, Shivani.
Awesome.
A very good morning to all the respected
Gotcha.
teachers, delegates, and participants. I'm Soumya Shafalika on the behalf of Biozo Club. Gladly welcome the guest of speaker for today's webinar. He is an experienced research scholar and currently the research head of Department of Training and Innovation, Hereditary Life Science Private Limited. His primary area of research is mainly focused on study and phytoremediation of heavy metal toxicity in mining and industrial belt with special reference to hexavalent chromium-rich soil and utilization of post-harvest crop residues and plant biomass for generation of biofuel. He is well versed in research related to environmental biotechnology, soil chemistry, plant biochemistry, plant microbiology, soil rhizopheric interaction, microbial biochemistry, antimicrobial production, and oral cancer genomics. Many of his achievements include several publications in peer-reviewed international journals and books published by Elsevier and Springer. He has been awarded at 8 different national and international conferences for his presentation by different scientific bodies. He is also an active reviewer in several journals of international repute, which include journals like Reviews in Environmental Science, Polish Journal of Microbiology, Online Journal of Biological Sciences, and American Journal of Plant Science. He has also reviewed more than 100 articles and has received the prestigious Publon Global Peer Review Award for 1% reviewer in the field of pharmacology and toxicology, awarded by Web of Science in the year of 2018. Please welcome Dr. Pratyush Kumar Das.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. So I hope as it is a Sunday, so students will be like on a rest mode, but still we are there are many participants over here, those who are enthusiastic for this webinar. So I'm quite happy and it's quite interesting to know so much of students have gathered. So thank you for inviting me to this event. Thank you to the Biozo Club and thank you to CET, College of Engineering and Technology. And so this today, as it is the microbiome day, so uh, I was asked to give a lecture on something related to this oral microbiome and its impact. So that is why I thought that yes, this will be a very good opportunity to tell something about cancer, oral cancer, because this is one of the most important, one of the dreaded disease, and it has taken many lives where we cannot tell if just in the case of COVID, we are having several vaccines are coming out now. There is some kind of cocktails and all, but in case of cancer, we do not have a vaccine nor any treatment strategies. Only what we can do is we can go for a surgery or radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and then there are some of the upcoming strategies like gene therapy and all, but those are at a very nascent stage. So I would like to focus on this particular aspect of this how this human papilloma virus is affecting the or is responsible for the oral cancer or the cancer of the it is called as oral squamous cell carcinoma, that is the squamous cell cancer of this oral cavity, and how we can just improve, or how we can just avoid getting infected with such kind of dreaded diseases. So may I present the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
I think, sir, this is Dr. Pradhan, head of the department biotechnology. Before you start, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here. It's a and very warm welcome to CET and the Department of Biotechnology Bioju Club. And we are unfortunately not able to meet. In fact, the students, they every year they look for so many events through this club activity in the college. This is one platform where speakers from different field and scientists, they are invited, and we like to invite you personally, to visit our department and interact with our students. But thank you so much for agreeing to their invitation, because I was not in a part of that process, because students are under tremendous pressure because of this pandemic current situation. They are all at home, and it is good actually you can share your experience, so that they will feel little bit relaxed in terms of getting back to their academic activities. And college hope is going to open soon, and definitely I will personally invite you once again, because being here in the city, it's a very great opportunity for students to interact closely little bit, and you can suggest them some potential research area they can take on when they go for higher studies. Thank you so much again, Dr. Pratyush, and please go ahead and start your session.
Thank you, sir, and definitely we will surely have a collaboration with you, and will work for the benefit of the students.
So,
So I hope the screen is visible to all.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
yes.
Okay. Myself, as I said, that I'm Dr. Pratish Kumar Das, the research head of Department of Training and Innovation, Heredity Healthcare and Life Sciences. So basically, we are having previously we were Heredity Life Sciences, and we are in the market since the last 3 years. And now recently only we have started a healthcare division, and this is we are providing services to different hospitals, and then research institutes and pharma companies. Along with that, we are also providing some professional advices and some hands-on training in the field of life sciences. And we are also giving training to students of the students who have enrolled for PhD or master students or undergraduate students. And the training are for a different duration period, and most are complying. All of the modules are complying with that of the latest industrial standards. So our board of directors, so he's Dr. Gopal Krishna Purohit. So he's the director from the life sciences part, the part in which I am related, and he's Mr. Sangram Patnaik, is the director of the healthcare. So both of them are on a jointly or unitedly, they are working towards the same goal of achieving uh, maximum success and benefit for the society. So the team here, I'm there, and then he's Mr. Anjani Kumar Upadhyay, the research assistant of the R&D wing, and then we have Mr. Pavitra Patnaik, who is the head of purchase, and he's the administrative head. Then we have Dr. Lali Smuti Sahu. He is the head of the clinical diagnostics lab, and we have Mr. Swadhin Palu, the business development and analytical services part head, and Subra Sulipta Jena, the research assistant of healthcare, and Balabhadra Rautrai, who is the technician in the healthcare department, and 10 more other supporting members like in the field of marketing and services from different areas of these states as well as from other states. Like we have some employees recently located at Vizag and then Barampur and Kolkata. So from each and every corner, we are just trying to focus on this field of life sciences and healthcare. So some of the research activities conducted this year, and this year we had some dissertation students from due to the pandemic. We couldn't take much more students, but still then we had around 25 to 30, almost 30 students from different institutes, which included Revensa and then Utkal University, Shiksha Anusandhan University, and then from VIT Vellore, and from other institutes like UN College, Adaspur, and other parts of this state. So the training and the dissertations that we are providing are basically on the field of microbiology and industrial microbiology, nanotechnology, environmental toxicology and soil science, molecular biology, clinical microbiology, and plant biotechnology. And coming to the innovation part, so we are having innovation. We are having our own in-house innovation where we have developed some vitamin D enriched eggs. That means the chicken eggs are being enriched with vitamin D by feeding the chickens with some kinds of phytoplanktons that are helpful in producing this vitamin D. Then we have also prepared a bio-based filter that will help in removing almost 10 times reducing the concentration of hexavalent chromium in water. Then we also have a two-chambered water treatment facility for this remediation of heavy metals, and we have tested it upon chromium 6. So this is basically a kind of engineering, like bioengineering job that we have carried out, and it is yielding successful results, and we are still it is in a trial stage. So these are some of the innovations. We have some other innovations also that we are working out, like preparation of some bandages and some formulations for wound healing purposes. Then our publications in the year 2021, we have some of the publications related to oral cancer in International Journal of Genetic Engineering and Recombination. Then this is a recently accepted paper of COVID-19, like the role of hematological parameters and their role as a prognostic biomarker. And then glucose extraction from Colocasia esculenta and production of ethanol, and some other book chapters those are in press. So our services, we are providing services in the field of life sciences as well as healthcare. So in the life sciences, there is proteomic analysis. We do proteomic analysis, 16S rRNA sequencing, whole genome sequencing, oligonucleotide synthesis, DNA, barcoding, gene identification, then all these things. And in the healthcare services, like detection of viral diseases, now we are in the phase of going for a NABL validation or NABL audit in the coming week. So sooner or later, we'll be starting with the detection of viruses like COVID-19 and other hepatitis C virus and all other viruses. We'll be conducting the RT-PCR test. Then we have the post-COVID tests that are being conducted like D-dimer, ferritin, and other routine blood tests like CBC, urea, creatinine, blood glucose. We have the system for COVID-19 dose step collection, and we also have some 1800 plus other parameters of blood tests. So, without wasting much more time, we'll be coming to the topic of role of poor oral hygiene in HPV-associated head and neck squamous cell carcinoma. So, before going to the depth of this, like what is this HPV and how is this poor oral hygiene being responsible, let us discuss something on the parts of the basics, like what is this cancer. Like all of the people must be knowing that what are these cancers and what is this, but there are technicalities in this, and we need to know about this. So we know that human cells grow and divide to form new cells. So all the time there is some kind of division in between the cells. But once the cells grow older or they get damaged, then they are being stopped, or they are being put to the automatic death mechanism that is known as the apoptosis or the programmed cell death. So that or else what happens that if the cells do not die, then their number will increase and will start growing and growing till our death. So being a human will not may change into the shape of a big football or something, or like that of a globe. So in the stages of apoptosis, so first what happens is the cells are being targeted, or they are being identified, like what are the cells. Then there is the shrinking of cells, and they are being captured by these apoptotic bodies. Then there is the shrinking and fragmentation of nucleus occurs. There is formation of apoptotic bodies. So these are the apoptotic bodies, and they are being engulfed by the cell eating method or the phagocytosis. Now, what if the cells do not die? Then this is what is actually cancer. When there is the apoptotic mechanism fails, then at that time it will lead to some kinds of cancer. Now, coming to the tumors, like cancers are mostly associated with this tumor formation. So we have basically two different types of tumors. That is, one is benign, and another one is malignant. So the tumors, we know very well that those who cannot multiply, or once they are created at one place, they will be stable at that place only. So those are the benign tumors, and when they can be removed by like surgical operations and all. So they are not that much life threatening, because they do not have the ability, most of the time they do not have the ability to grow back. While the malignant tumors can spread from one tissue to the other tissues and the neighboring tissues, and once you resurrect those tumors by surgery, they can again revert back. So the survival rate is quite critical, or quite complicated in this. Survival rate is quite low in case of malignant tumors, and there are complications with the treatment procedures. Now, we know that malignancy and metastasis, these are the two most common types of terms that are being used in cancer. So what is this malignant? Malignant lesions, as I told you, that they can spread from one tissue to the other neighboring tissues. So they have the chances of growing back. But what happens in case of malignancy is that the tumor, like if uh, uh, there is a formation of a tumor at the oral cavity, then they have all the chances of spreading to the nearby organs or the nearby tissues. While in case of metastasis, the primary cancer may be at a different site, while it will flow through the lymph nodes, the blood lymph node system to other parts. And for example, over here in the figure, you can see that the primary cancer is located in the intestine. However, it has gone, or it has flown to the liver part and the lungs to form cancers of the lung and the liver. Over there, it will not be called as a lung cancer or a liver cancer, but it will be called as the metastatic lung cancer, or the metastatic intestinal cancer, because as it has originated from the intestine and it has migrated to other different organs, so it is known as a metastatic cancer. So in case of metastatic cancer, the mode of transfer of these cancer cells is through the lymph system, and it is quite critical, or the survivability rate in case of this kind of cancer is very less. Because in this case, what happens is that most of the organs are being affected, and it spreads in a very rapid manner. So if there is a cancer, if someone is suffering from a metastatic cancer and he is present at stage number 2, and then it will take around 15 or 20 days, it may take, means it may be as quick as also even 7 days or 2 or 3 days to spread to other different organs, and the cancer may shift from stage 2 to stage 3, and ultimately the stage 4 or the uncurable stage. Now, we also use a term that is known as the tumor microenvironment. So this is the environment that is present surrounding the tumor. So they influence the normal cells, molecules. The cancer cells influence the normal cells, molecules, and blood vessels that surround. And these normal cells and other molecules and blood vessels in the surrounding of the cancer cells, they feed this tumor. And that is this environment of molecules, blood vessels surrounding the cancer cells is known as the tumor microenvironment. So that this is particularly very much important to study during the study of a cancer. So they supply oxygen and nutrients to the tumor cells, and they also help in removal of toxic waste. So the toxic waste from the tumor cells are being like dumped into the microenvironment. So it makes necessary for collection of cut margins. Now here we have that whenever there is a when there is a cancer patient, and before surgery the there will be the doctors will take the samples for biopsy studies. So at that time they take both the tumor samples as well as the cut margin. Cut margin means the area that is just surrounding the tumor. So that area is the tumor microenvironment, and that is generally used for the post-surgery analysis. Once the surgery has been completed, then they see for the tumor sample, they analyze the tumor sample as well as the cut margin to know that what is the grade of the tumor, and how far what is the probability that the tumor may progress further, and just check out the survivability rate, like they predict the survivability rate. So this the collection of the sample and the cut margin is nothing but a kind of, like you can say that it is a kind of a prognosis part. So it helps in the prognosis of the disease. Coming to the global cancer scenario, like we can see that this is the 2018 statistics of Glovocan, where you can see that like we are the Indians, and we are the third most ranked country in case of cancer, both in case of incidence as well as mortality, the occurrence and the deaths. The maximum is in China, followed by USA, and then India. So why this mortality rate that is occurring? So basically, of because of the lifestyle that we are following, like the eating habits, and then the environmental carcinogens we are getting exposed to, or the UV radiation. So these are mostly responsible for the global cancer occurrence. Now, another like I was frequently telling the survival rate. So this is the survival rate is another term that is being used by the physicians in case of cancer. So this is the percentage of people who will be alive at a certain time after diagnosis. So like if we are taking a period of 1 year after the diagnosis, and if we found that out of 100 people, 60 people are surviving till 1 year. So the survival rate of that particular disease is 60%. And the overall survival rate is when it includes all people with a specific cancer type. So when there is cancer, and the people that are surviving till 1 year, that is the survival rate for all the cancer types. But if it is a specific cancer type, then the people, those who are surviving in that particular cancer type, those are known that will be called as the overall survival rate. Similarly, the 5-year survival rate is taken as a kind of like a pragmatic instrument for demonstrating that what will be the prognosis of a disease, or what will be the outcome of a disease. So the percentage of people who will be alive 5 years after the diagnosis, like once a person has been diagnosed with the oral cancer, then the after 5 years, if the people are surviving, then they will come under the 5-year relative survival rate. So if 60 people out of 100 survive for a period of 5 years, then it is 60%. So the relative survival rate in case of this oral cancer or the oral squamous cell carcinoma is quite low, and that is around 60%. So this is a very bad scenario, and in this 5-year survival rate, it does not include those who die from other diseases. Okay, so if a person has been suffering from oral cancer, but he dies of like you can say a heart attack, or some other pulmonary infections, then those people will not be included in this 5-year survival rate. It will only include those persons who have where the deaths have occurred due to only cancer, not due to only oral cancer, and not any other type of disease. Now, disease-free survival rate. Suppose now most of the people's the percentage of the people in complete remission, like after finishing the treatment, the people those who have become disease-free. So this is known as the disease-free survival rate. And progression-free survival rate means some of the peoples have come have demonstrated a a tumor growth, but there is no further new tumor growth after the resurrection, surgical resurrection or something. There is no further tumor growth. So this is known as progression free survival rate. Then in cancer stages, like we are having different stage of cancer. So what is this like stages? Now it is being divided into four stages. It is stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, 3 and 4. So in stage 0, this is the cancer is in situ, like it is in the place from where it has originally it has begun, and they have not spread to the nearby tissues. So in these cases, it is often curable by removing either the entire tumor, or sometimes there are some of the medicines like anti-cancerous drugs can be given to completely cure the cancer in this stage. While in stage 1, like the cancer, the tumor has grown a little bit, and it has not grown into the nearby tissues. So there is no kind of progression to the nearby tissues, or it has also not spreaded into the lymph nodes, so it is not metastatic. So it is a early stage cancer. Now in stage 2 and stage 3, the cancers becomes larger, or the tumors grow more deeply into the area where they are growing. So they spread their roots and they spread into the nearby tissues. Here they may have a chance of growing or spreading to the lymph nodes, or they may not spread to the lymph nodes. While in the stage 4, that is the crucial stage, or that is the like we call it as a death stage, where there is no chances or very rare chances of recovering. Here the cancer will have spread to other organs, and now this is known as the advanced or the metastatic cancer. Now, when there is a diagnosis of cancer, or when there is a biopsy of this cancer, then the report suggests the report that we get, that consists of three different uh, points. That is the TNM. One is T stands for tumor, N is for node, and M is for metastasis. So this T is the tumor, like what is the size? It describes the size and the location of the tumor, and can be given from a number, like it is given as from a number that is 0 to 4. So how much the tumor has grown to the nearby tissues and how bigger is it, this is being denoted by this tumor. So it is measured generally in centimeters. So a larger tumor will definitely grow into the surroundings. So a tumor that is having a number like 4, that means it is a more advanced tumor, while a tumor that is having a number 0, that is just, it has just begun, or it is a very small tumor. Similarly, in case of node, the node is being represented by numbers like 0 to 3, that is and this node stands for the lymph nodes. So we know that these lymph nodes help in fighting against different infections, and if these lymph nodes are being affected with the cancer, so the cancer spreads rapidly from one place to other, or the one organ to other. So lymph nodes, if the cancer spreads to a distant part of a body through the lymph nodes, so the distant lymph nodes get affected. So that is these are known as the distant lymph nodes, and this is what happens is that this is known as metastasis, when the cancer spreads from one place to a very distant place. However, for some tumors, the location of lymph nodes with cancer may determine the N category. So if it has spread to a very large distance, so obviously it will be like the stage of the node will be 3. So in this way, it is the nodes are being designated. Now, in case of metastasis, it has, like, the cancer has spread to different parts of the body or different organs. So metastasis is being denoted as either 0 or 1. So if there is no metastasis or no spread of cancer from one organ to different organ or to distant part of the body, then it is M0. While if there is some signs of metastasis, then it is denoted as M1. So in this way, when there is a report of the biopsy that is being released by the hospitals, so they have what is the stage of tumor, and what is the stage of node, and what is the stage of metastasis. Collectively, they are known as the TNM, or it is the report is known as the TNM report. Now, restaging. Sometimes the doctor may restage your cancer. So what does it means, like restaging? Now, suppose you think that you are standing up on a stage, and now due to some incident, you have just you have been like pulled down of the stage, and now again you are taking your place. So that is a kind of restaging. So in these similar conditions, now suppose there is a growth of cancer, and then the surgery has been done, then after that, like there is again the reoccurrence of the cancer. So at that time the doctor or the physician may need to restage the cancer, or he may need to relook that what is the cancer, how the cancer has changed over time. Or sometimes what happens is that like you have a cancer detected at stage 1, or someone has a cancer, a patient has a cancer detected at stage 1, and the physician will now give some amount of like drugs or some amount of treatment strategies he will prescribe for to eradicate the cancer. Now after a regular treatment of around let us say 2 or 3 weeks, the the physician will again restage the cancer or relook that whether the cancer has been decreasing, or even if it has increased, then what is its current stage as compared to the original one, and how far it has progressed or how far it has reduced. So this is known as the restaging. So coming to now the poor oral hygiene. So oral hygiene is a very important factor and a very important thing that is mostly related with oral cancer. So due to this poor oral hygiene, most of the cases of oral cancers occurrence happens, and mostly in India, countries like India, China. So what we have is that we the people of India are mostly most of the people are most inclined towards uh, alcohol consumption, tobacco chewing, and then smoking of tobacco products, brittle quid chewing, and all these things. So these are some of the factors that leads to a poor oral hygiene. And most of the time, the frequency of toothbrushing is one of the most important factors, because in many parts of the country, still you can find like people who even do not brush a single time in a day, or they may brush their teeth only once in every 2 or 3 days. So that is the kind of oral hygiene. There is the chance of creation of poor oral hygiene. Then the teeth cleaning material, like most of the time, the teeth cleaning material that are being used in rural areas, it may be like charcoal, or it may be brick dust, or they are using even tobacco products, like we call it as gudaku or gadaku. So these are the things that are being used for cleaning of teeth. So although the rural people, they get satisfied that yes, this is the things and we can like easily clean our teeth, but a proper cleaning of the teeth is intended with a toothbrush only. So these materials, they do not contribute to a good oral hygiene, but what they do is they deteriorate the conditions of the oral microenvironment, as well as lead to the growth of many more microflora in the oral cavity. Then if there is any kind of wounds that has occurred in your mucosal membrane inside your oral cavity, then it may also lead to uh, cancer if we do not have a good oral hygiene. Then alcohol, like it leads to, in alcohol there is the acetaldehyde concentration that leads to oral cancer because of formation of tumors. Similarly, in tobacco we have like nitrile and nitrate and nitrosamines compounds. Then we have areca nut. Then lesser number of dental visits. Like most of us, we do not never go to visit a doctor. We only go to visit a dentist only when we have a problem with our gums or teeth. While it is quite advisable to like visit a dentist once in a month, so as to check up, to have a regular checkup, and get to know that whether you are maintaining a good oral hygiene or your oral hygiene is very much poor. And then we have some immunocompromised conditions, like some persons, those who are suffering from different immunocompromised conditions or immunodeficiency, if someone is being what you can say that if someone is being now, like someone has been diagnosed with COVID-19, and now there is a immunocompromised condition or some other disease. At that time, there is a high chance that this poor oral hygiene will lead to formation of some of the bacteria or viruses that will lead to this formation of oral cancer. Then a lower socioeconomic status. This is one of the thing, like most of the poor people, they do not. There are many sections in the society who cannot like afford to buy a toothbrush or and toothpaste for their daily use. So that is why they generally prefer to use like the natural one, like charcoal, and then tobacco products for cleaning up of their teeth. Then is the lower level of education. So most of the time people think that although being educated, some educated people also think that yes, like we, after consumption of alcohol and like consumption of tobacco will do like no bad to us. So that is the kind of those type of people are nothing but they are just idiotic nonsense, who do not have who, although they are well educated, but they are like they do not they are just arrogant, a kind of arrogant persons. But there are some sections of the society, those who are very poor and they do not have even basic education, or they would not have ever gone to the primary schools. So they even also do not have the idea that what is poor oral hygiene and how it could be like rectified. So all these reasons leads to different kinds of like change in the microflora of the oral cavity and leading to oral cancer. So you can, I can tell you that if you can all know that if we study the oral microflora, then we can like predict that what will if that person has a particular chance of getting any disease. Oral microflora study in case of a child and that of an adult is quite different. Like the oral microflora present in that of the oral cavity of a child is quite different from that of an adult. So once those are being studied, so we can generally predict a mechanism by which, or we can predict that what kind of disease that person may perceive in the future, in the near future or in the far future, for and how those can be rectified from the beginning. So that is why this oral hygiene and oral microflora are very much important for this diseases, like not only cancer but also for gastrointestinal diseases and for cardiac diseases and pulmonary diseases. Now coming to the HPV, so it is one of the most common virus transmitted worldwide and has been found to approximately like affect 50 to 80% of human populations, like sexually active human populations. So one of the most common mode of transmission of this human papilloma virus is also during sexual intercourse, and then it is accountable for a third of all the virus induced tumors and 5% of all human cancers. So among these, the human papilloma virus, it is most common in case of women. Around the cancers, 90.48% of all cancer cases in women arise out of this human papilloma virus. And among all the types of cancers, human papilloma virus is mostly responsible for causing squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck region. So this is a kind of virus, and this may be present in our body itself, but during some like suitable conditions or some immunocompromised conditions, these virus may become active, and then they will lead to oral cancer. So there are like hundreds of more than 100 of different types of human papilloma virus, out of which this can be categorized into the high risk group and the low risk group. So under high risk group, these are the different viruses like HPV 18, 31, 33, and low risk group is HPV 16, HPV 11, HPV 40. So these are the different viruses. These are the HPV viruses that have been categorized according to their risk profile. So among these, the HPV 16 is the most deadly virus that leads to oral cancer or squamous cell carcinoma of the oral cavity. So it is the HPV 16. So coming to know about this structure, we can know that like this particular virus has around 9 to 10 different kinds of genes. So they have some early phase genes as well as the some low like late phase genes. So early phase genes are nothing but E1, E2, E4, E5, E6, and E7, while the late phase genes are the L1 and L2. So these are the like capsid proteins and the genes. Along with that, they have a long control region or non-coding region and replication of origin. So this is like they have the different uh, properties. These different genes have different properties. So I'll be telling you, like in case of this L1 and L2 protein. So L1 protein is a like a small protein of 55 kilodalton like a molecular weight, and plays a major role in viral infection by promoting binding of the virion to heparin sulfate receptors of the basal membrane cells. So what happens is that in this case of L1 protein, this one will help you, like this one will help the virus to go and attach to the like heparin sulfate receptors that are present on the membrane cells of the internal on the squamous cell epithelial cells, the membrane cells of the squamous cells present inside our oral cavity. So once, because to spread the viral infection or to spread the cancer, the virus needs to first bind to a cell. So for that, they need to bind to a particular receptor on the cell, because virus generally do not go and bind randomly to a particular place. Like in case of like COVID-19, they go and bind to a particular receptors on the present on the lymphocytes. So in the same way, this virus also goes and binds to the heparin sulfate receptors on the basal membrane cells. So this L1 protein, this helps in, or this helps the virus to bind to this heparin sulfate receptors. And then the L2 is another capsid protein that is of a larger weight or larger size, and it helps in facilitating, or it helps to package the viral DNA. So the viral DNA is being packaged inside this L2 capsid protein. So that is why this one is known as the capsid protein. Like each virus has a capsid coat or a capsid protein. Similarly, this HPV 16 virus also has a L2 capsid protein. Now we have the E1 and E2 and E4 proteins. So the E1 and E2 proteins have most of the process, they most of the times they help in the process of replication of the HPV virus. So E1 will attract different enzymes. So the role of this E1 is it will attract different enzymes and proteins that are required for the viral replication. So E1 will recruit different compounds or proteins or enzymes that are required for viral replication. And E2 serves as the regulation factor for transcription or transcription regulation of E6 and E7. So I'll come to this E6 and E7 in the subsequent slides. So these E6 and E7 are mostly responsible for the causation of cancer, or the occurrence of cancer. So in this way, the E2 serves as a transcription regulator. It helps in promoting the transcription of this E6 and E7. And it also controls the entire viral copy number. And E4, like the function of E4 is still now not that much been elucidated. However, it is thought to like contribute towards release of virins by interacting with keratin conjugated amyloid fibers. So what it happens is that like it binds to the it helps in like degrading the keratin conjugated amyloid fibers over the cell, thereby leading to cell fragility. So once the cells, the viral virions have multiplied inside one cell, they'll break open that cell and flow to the other cells. So for breaking open one cell, it is highly essential to increase the cell fragility. That is being done by this E4 proteins. Coming to the major mechanism, that is the E6 and E7 mechanism that are mostly responsible for causing cancer. So what we know is that there are there are multiple number of genes that are involved in cancer of any kind. Like in case of oral cancer, we have the genes like MDM2, like mouse double homolog 2. Then we have some EGFR, epidermal growth factor genes, and some other many several genes. Like there will be multiple number of genes like TRAF genes, and multiple genes that are regulating the process of oral cancer. But in this case, there are two major genes that are mostly involved in all kind of oral squamous cell carcinoma, and that is the P53 gene and the RB, that is retinoblastoma, and the P53. So in this case, what happens? The mechanism of the E6 and E7, these are the two viral oncogenes that are present in the human papilloma 16 virus, and these are the early phase genes, and these are the two oncogenes. So what happens? The E6 acts upon P53, and the E7 is related to this retinoblastoma. So in this case, if you see that E2 helps us, what it does, as in the previous slide we have seen that E2 will serve as a transcription regulator, and E1 attracts several enzymes. So similarly over here, E2, as it is a transcription regulator, it will recruit the helicase E1 to the origin. So the role of E1, as we have shown, is that E1 helps in viral replication. So the E2 will first recognize the origin and then will recruit E1 to the origin. E1 will now invite many enzymes and proteins and all for the replication to begin. So once the replication occurs, then there is the transcription that is again being governed by the E2. The E2 the gene will again govern the transcription uh, of this viral RNA. After that, then there is the expression. So once the transcription occurs, after the transcription process, the E6 and E7 gene are expressed by this human papilloma virus. So E2 recognizes the origin of replication, recruits E1, E1 goes on with replication followed by transcription, that is assisted by E2 or governed by E2, and then after transcription there is the expression of E6 and E7 genes. So now this E6 and E7 genes, if we separately go over here, the E6 interacts with the P53. Now P53 is known as the it is a kind of control region of our cell. So it helps in controlling cell growth. So this is a kind of a apoptotic center. So this P53, what it does, the mechanism of P53 is that if there is some kind of defect in a particular DNA or a gene, then this P53, what it will do, it will first try to repair the defect. So this is known as a repair mechanism. P53 is a gene that involves in repair mechanism. So it tries to repair that particular gene or particular DNA. But suppose there is a error in the DNA that is being not being able to be repaired. So at that time, P53 will direct the the cell to go for apoptosis or natural cell death or programmed cell death. So in this way, the P53 helps in controlling cell division or eradicating of unnatural or cells or the DNA that are having errors. So what kind of errors this can be? It can be any kind of errors leading out of mutation or due to faulty replication or transcription mechanism. So at that time, it may be like mismatch error, or it may be there may be some nucleotide missing, or there may be shifting of some nucleotides from one place, or there may be some kind of transposons related mutations. So this P53 is much more essential, and the E6 in this case leads to disintegration of P53 by ubiquitinations. So by the process of ubiquitinations, so what happens is that the E6 will generally disintegrate the P53. So once the P53 is disintegrated, then obviously there will be no one to stop the uncontrolled cell division. So now what happens is that there will be uncontrolled cell division, the cells won't die, they will accumulate and then will form a lump or tumor that is known as a cancer. Similarly, in case of E7 gene, the E7 gene, what happens is that here you can see that there is another a protein, that is E2F1, that that helps in controlling the activity of retinoblastoma. So the retinoblastoma is being repressed by the E2F1 gene. In the retinoblastoma is a kind of it acts also as a oncogene. So the E2F1 is inactivated by this E7. The E7 does not directly acts upon RB or the retinoblastoma gene, but it acts upon the E2F1. So it inactivates the repression activity of E2F1. So E2F1 was previously suppressing or repressing the retinoblastoma activity. Now this has been inactivated. So once this has been inactivated, then the retinoblastoma gene is now all free. And then what it leads, as it is being a kind of a oncogene, it's lead to it promotes the activation of S phase genes, or that is the in the cell cycle it leads to the activation of S phase genes leading to more number of or uncontrolled cell division, thereby leading to cancer. So in this way, the all the oral cancer are being caused, and that is what it is mostly we are having the maximum number of cases. I came across a study where it has been shown that uh, the oral cancer cases in countries like China, it is like around 40 to 50% of all cancer types. While if you see globally, then 5% of all cancer types are oral cancer. But in India, particularly in India, if we see for all the cancer types, then out of that, oral squamous cell carcinoma are around 65 to 70%, or even in some of the states, it is around 80% of all the cancer types. So this is the really a very severe problem, and the most difficult part of it is that we do not have a proven mechanism or proven strategy to cure for this. So it is always advisable to have like it is called that prevention is better than cure. So similarly, it is highly essential that in the current COVID scenario, like we are preventing ourselves from getting infected with COVID by wearing mask and using sanitizer, maintaining social distance. In the same way, it is highly advisable that we need to like have a proper oral hygiene so as to prevent ourselves from cancer, because there is a lot more of chance to like get infected with COVID and then come out safe. But in case of cancer, the survivability is almost negligible. So as we know that our life is precious, and why to waste such kind of lives by following different odd lifestyles, and following different kind of and why not to prepare ourselves or keep ourselves safe by maintaining a proper oral hygiene. So coming to the conclusion, this is like HPV is a potent virus that is responsible in oral cancer. So it is HPV-16, as we know, is the major driver of oral carcinogenesis and mostly predominant in women. But this particular virus is mostly predominant in women. But nowadays, it has also been found to be present in males also. And the oncogenes that are related are the E6 and E7 oncogenes that are related to the carcinogenesis of the virus. So this oral hygiene we need to maintain because it is an important factor, and if we maintain this, then we may be sure that we are not going to suffer from at least this HPV associated oral squamous cell carcinoma, nor we may also advise some other people or to the society so that the burden of cancer, the global burden of cancer reduces and we stay healthier and younger. So thank you very much. So if there is any questions from participants, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for a wonderful session. Now, I would like to request the participants to ask questions if they have any. Like they can unmute themselves or they can post their question in the chat box.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sir, I just had a doubt that retinoblastoma is referred as a cancer for the eye.
Yeah.
So, how does HPV virus actually affects like the retinoblastoma, progresses for the
Yeah.
retinoblastoma, causing the
Yeah.
cancer of eye, and that actually leads for the oral cancer. May I know how
Yeah.
it happens?
Yeah, actually, when this is oral cancer is nothing but it is a subset of the head and neck squamous cell carcinoma. So within head and neck squamous cell carcinoma, there are many kind of cancers. Like it is the cancer of the eye, cancer of the nasal, passage, the oropharynx, nasal pharynx, naropharynx, and all this. So nasopharynx and all this. So whenever this retinoblastoma is also somewhat in uh, related, because this is the gene that helps. It is a kind of a tumor suppressor gene, and it sometimes also works as an oncogene. So if there is if it is an oncogene, then once it is there in the eye, so This not only is related to the cancer of the eye, but it is also related to the cancer of the oral cavity because the virus doesn't remains at one place. So it there is a most of the chance that if you are having a like cancer of the eye, then it will mostly spread to the oral squamous cell. So in that way, like it is highly like there is no guarantee that like retinoblastoma gene will always be involved. So for that, you need to study multiple number of patients. But as far as the statistics are being concerned, or different researchers they have worked out. So what they have seen is that the P53 is almost common in all kind of cancers and mostly the oral cancer. And along with that, the next gene that is much more responsible for this HPV related cancer is the RB gene.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions more? Okay.
Sir, may I ask you more if it's possible?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Thank you, sir. So, does that mean that after the metastasis of the HPV means after the activation of the retinoblastoma, the formation of the retinoma, or the cause of retinoblastoma, the P53 genes are again then suppressed, or they occur simultaneously? I mean to
Pardon,
say,
I couldn't.
like, is there any kind of possibility that E7 gene gets activated first and then it goes for the retinoblastoma, causing for the formation of the PRB, and then it goes and metastasis. After the metastasis, the virus comes and infects the OPSCCs, the oropharyngeal squamous cells, and causes the carcinoma over there by suppressing the P53. Or they actually go simultaneously, like the E6 and E7
No,
get
no.
activated.
Yeah, yeah. This is particularly a kind of a, like a simultaneous mechanism because both of the genes are a result of the transcription. So after the transcription process, both of them get to reveal themselves, or they are produced, and these genes act upon one of them. Like E6 is particularly related to the this P53. It suppresses the P53, while the E7 goes for the retinoblastoma. But it doesn't mean that always this retinoblastoma gene will be what it will be suppressed by this E7. Sorry, it will be released. The E2F1 factor will be inactivated. But as far as the studies are concerned, so most of the time both the genes go simultaneously and act upon these two particular tumor suppressors and genes.
Thank you, sir.
So I
Sir,
think there are no more. Yeah.
sir, can we use nanotechnology-based drug delivery to target against the HPV virus to neutralize it?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was thinking of including those things in my presentation, but it would have been very lengthy one, so that is why I didn't. So actually, there are nowadays nanotechnology-based drug delivery systems are being researched upon, but like it is now a it is a very far away dream that we may sometime in the future may use those drugs because there are many kind of uh, problems associated with toxicity of nanoparticles and then their persistence in the environment or in the human body. So that is why they have not been used. But like you can say that uh, nanoparticles are being used. There are many different techniques. One is the hyperthermia, where the nanoparticles are targeted to a particular tissue, and then they are irradiated with some heating devices out of the from the outer side of the body, by using some IR irradiation device or UV irradiation device. They are irradiated, and then they what they do, they just destroy those cells that are causing cancer. While there is also in case of alternative to hyperthermia, then we also have hyperthermia can be of different types. Like one is UV, light assisted hyperthermia, and another one is wave assisted hyperthermia or ultrasound wave assisted hyperthermia, where again we are sending directing the nanoparticles to a particular place, and then we are putting the patient or that particular affected area within a magnetic field, and then these nanoparticles, due to the emotions, they heat up or gain some amount of energy, thereby destroying it. Or there is also targeted drug delivery, where a particular nanoparticle is conjugated with a receptor that is carrying a drug, and that receptor is programmed to go and travel to a particular cell or particular antigen, go and bind to a particular antigen, suppose a particular cancer. So they will go and bind to that cancer, thereby, in this way, they will prevent the loss of drug. When we are using the drugs, so what is happening is that we are taking a paracetamol. So in that case, 100% of all the drugs are not being consumed or not being utilized by our body. So around 10 or 20% at max will be used by our body, while the rest of them goes as a waste. So in a nanoparticle assisted drug delivery system, we can directly target the drug to a particular site of infection or particular site of disease, so that there is no intermittent loss of the drug, and the effect of the drug will be more pronounced and the cure will be more faster.
Yes, so one more question. So, can we develop any biodegradable nanoparticle that is not needed to be eradicated afterwards of the treatment?
Yeah, there are many kind of nanoparticles that are being now researched upon. You can see that silica nanoparticles. Silica nanoparticles are one of the most common nanoparticles, and they are non-toxic. So once if you are using those nanoparticles, then you can develop a nanoporous silica. These are like spherical silica that are having a blank core or porous core. So within that, you can put some drugs and then target it towards a particular area. So at that time, there will be a controlled release of the drugs to that particular area, as well as the silica being non-toxic, and they can be easily excreted from our body. So in this way, many research are being going on. People are also studying on different metallic nanoparticles, gold nanoparticles and all. But silver nanoparticles, there have been many work related to silver nanoparticles, and now gold nanoparticles have been done. Now there are also many nanoparticles related to carbon, as well as graphene oxide, and all these are being used for this cancer related studies. But we can only be sure when we are going to use this on humans, because all the studies that are being conducted are animal studies or cell line studies. So what kind of effect it is showing in humans, that will be much more important to see in the near future. However, I think that silica nanoparticles can act as a better alternative, because we are having silica nanoparticles in toothpaste, and then in cosmetics. So these are generally non-toxic, and this can be used.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Pratyush, can I have a small question?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what is the metabolic hypothesis now? I mean, in general, not only oral cancer, like workbook effect, what people are now talking about, any specific suggestion in those lines, and to have a target of any specific metabolic pathway, or any other drugs people are, anybody has been.
Uh,
So what's your view?
yeah, sir. Actually, relating to the metabolic pathway, as I said, that this cancer is mostly related to that of the cell cycle. So it is related to the cell apoptosis. So over there are many metabolic pathways and many complicated pathways also, related to different kinds of genes. Because as I said, that P53 is a common gene that is being mostly related in cancer, but there are also many other genes that are
Yeah.
present to the downstream of P53. that are being affected due to any changes in this P53. So this is a chain like reaction. So for this, what it makes it more difficult is that till now, none of there has not been a particular we can say that if jaundice occurs, if we are having jaundice or if we are having COVID, then this is the life cycle, this is the pathway through which it goes. But in case of cancer, there is like a wave like structure that has been formed. So this gene affects this one and that one affects this. Sometimes the same gene may act as a tumor suppressor while the same gene converts into the oncogene. So the complete mechanism is still now not known for all the cancer types or all the mechanisms, and that is why we are in a crossroad where we are not being able to derive a drug that can be anti-cancerous. Like we are having, we can see that many papers are being published with plant extracts having anti-cancerous properties. Like recently, we had some research from Odisha itself with nanocurcumin being used as one of the cancer as a therapy for cancer. But that depends that how much that is being
Yeah, yeah.
applicable in case of humans.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So this has been
Yes,
a
sir.
very, I think, it's been a long time for almost all cancer cell. And I mean, gene label, I think it is fine. There are pretty much a lot of evidence, as you suggested, and those
Yes, sir.
genes and their associated pathways are too many. But in terms of apoptosis, let's say organelle target like mitochondrial targets or any specific glycolysis have been the dominating, pathway focused, I think, by many scientists, right? And but there is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
a lot of negligence towards the mitochondrial pathways. And I
Hmm.
was recently I attended a very interesting faculty development program in Punjab. Actually, that's online mode. 2 days back. So there are a lot of discussion we had in terms of like not specifically this type of cells, but in general the where we stand in cancer metabolism, right? And is it
Yes.
that the TCS cycle has been criticized for a long period by many groups, and it is not successful because they are multifactorial, and because the pathway it's difficult to quantify indeed, and things what you have been observed in genomic study in it's not mimicking to the phenotype results what people have done. Okay, so the clinical part,
Yes.
so the missing link is very still it is very challenging, I think, in terms of whether it's metabolic or whether any form, any determinant or gene. I don't know, gene therapy is a very interesting strategy, I think, but we are all we spent a lot of time to study the tissue level, pathway level focus, what we can
Hmm.
what the next, in coming years, what way we can approach the problem in terms of different cellular processes, not only at the gene level, even in cellular level, I think. So I think it's good. Thank you so much. I like all your talk. It's very interesting actually, and quite. I think we should sometime down the road, and we don't have here a big laboratory or groups working on those cells, but
Yes.
it will be nice if you can, maybe I will be in touch with you and come down and suggest some potential collaboration we can take up, because we are having we need data from at different level, multiple level, to target any metabolic hypothesis. So, and there is a group currently they are interested to work in they're working on same problem in Japan. Actually, they are in touch. So they wanted to establish a collaboration, like Japanese Society of Head and Neck Cancer. Actually, that was.
Yes.
So few scientists are in touch, but I am not in I am not an expert in this field, and they approached me through that meeting. And if you wish, we can somehow invite you once again, and we're going to pretty soon have a program with them. So I will let you know, and you can
Sure, sure.
suggest your wherever the potential collaboration we can make, we can think of. Thank you so much then. And
Okay.
any
Thank you,
other
sir.
questions from students or any faculty?
Participants can unmute themselves and ask, if any, or can post a question in the chat box. Okay, then I would like to request Biswajit sir to speak a few words for us.
Hello. Good afternoon, all of you. So I'm very much excited to attend this webinar. I have quite suggestion that please arrange another seminar like post-COVID effect and some measures. So I request the Biotech Club to please arrange another seminar because it's high time to know our students regarding post-COVID effect. So please arrange a seminar regarding on the topic of COVID and its implication and post-COVID effect. So thank you, sir, for the nice presentation. So wish you all the success. And next time, I hope that we have a large audience. So I have a suggestion that you can use a placement cell Cisco WebEx, and you can have a large scale of webinar regarding post-COVID effect to know the awareness about the health awareness of students. So I request a suggestion, and Biology Club can be do this.
Thank you, sir. Actually, recently also we have published a paper. Like it got accepted yesterday only. We had published some papers related to hematological parameters. So, and what are the effects after COVID and during the COVID? So that will be a good topic. And also, we are thinking that in the month of August, first week, we are going to organize an international conference. Last year, we organized a national conference, recent advances in biological research. Similarly, we are also with last year we had around 128 participants from different places of India. So this year we are going to organize an international conference, and we'll be also happy to like collaborate with you and do some sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for the information. I think we have a very whatever the student, though it is a small department, but CET, I think we have many opportunity here to collaborate directly with any industry, local industry or any startup. In fact, government is putting a lot of pressure through many mechanisms from AICT and MHRD. And if you like, I can approach principal sir to officially I can initiate a MOU so that you can suggest some of the potential area. For that, we need to have a face-to-face meeting in our department, or I may visit also.
Yes, sir.
So if you get connected through our Bioju Club, we'll take a lead. The students are very curious nowadays, and they have
Yes.
been doing a lot of bioinformatics. They have been doing all biochemistry, but they really lack a lot of exposure to what is the current state of art research in almost every field, sir. So it will be very nice
Yes.
of any kind of if you can invite and share your conference poster. I will suggest some of the students and help them to send some of the work related to that. Whatever we have, maybe the very preliminary and introductory student level, work. They will be happy to submit also. It will be very nice if you
Yes,
can
sir.
share. Good. And
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, Biswajit sir also has a nice suggestion, and we'll try to. I will make our coordinators and probably our department so that we'll make it in campus wide one webinar where we'll invite sir also, because it is what sir has said is very little. Honestly speaking, it has. I could see imagine what he must be. There are very way complex things are there in, and it is very difficult to present in one talk. And probably sir is going to strategize couple of talks in future, pretty much down the road for us. So it will be very nice. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now the participants are requested to fill the form, feedback form, which is there in the chat box with valid details. Now I would like to hand over to Seema Didi for further proceedings.
On behalf of Biozo Club, I would like to thank our guest speaker,
Dr. Pratyush Kumar Das, who enlightened us with his knowledge and experience. I would also like to thank the delegates from Heredity Life Sciences for joining with us in this event. Next, I would like to thank our HOD sir and beloved teachers for gracing this event. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for showing interest in this event and making it a grand success. Thank you so much, everyone. And I would like to request the participants to please fill the feedback form with their valid details so that accordingly we will be generating the certificates and sending it to you.
So I will be leaving now, students. So you can go ahead and finish in your time, complete your formalities. And the coordinator, club coordinator, I request make this event, put it in a calendar in 2021. Okay, this is your first webinar. Any expenses or anything you like to give anything to sir or anything, though you have not taken prior approval, but put that in. Any other formalities is required. So let me know. Okay, and plan few more webinar down the road. At least every month one webinar you should target. Okay, starting from basic science to applied science. Okay, and if you are falling shortage of speaker, let me know. Okay, this will be a good way to get in touch with all of you, even though you are not coming to college. Okay, so by this day next month, if you can arrange one more webinar, it will be nice. That's what my suggestion. And coordinator can contact me or talk to me if you have any support you need from the department. Okay, well, you all have a good day and safe day. Okay, I will be leaving now for another meeting.
Thank you so much, sir.